Hello everyone, No Respawns here, hope you're doing well. So we're back again at Frostpunk, and in this video I wanted to, as briefly as I can do it, because I did try and record this earlier and it ended up being like 35 minutes, but basically talk about the Book of Laws, and more specifically the purpose laws that you get kind of in the later early game, shall we say, that kind of spell the mid game and actually define the kind of overall character of your city. So I'm going to look at order first and then faith. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, basically you get adaptation first, and then a point in the game unlocks a choice of a purpose choice, either going down a slightly militaristic order route or a more fanatical but benign at the start faith route. So on this save I've gone down the order route. If the might be to hear the military chanting, I've even got it paused and it's still chanting away, but also the flags are probably a bit more of a giveaway of the one I've been playing in this instance. Just as a side, this save is very recent and is on hard mode, which is why it's colder. It's on day 34 and it's colder than it would normally be on normal, but also my organisation of my buildings is quite good. Just as an FYI, because when I do my faith save, which is from last week, it's a bit messier, lads. Anyway, I'm going to try to be quick. So basically each of the purposes is characterised by a certain theme. So said order is very militaristic, and you can see that with the guard towers I've got poking out of the top here, as well as I've got things like these agitators, which are basically loudspeakers which kind of motivate people nearby, as well as I've got my propaganda center here, which basically just spills propaganda everywhere, and also a prison which I can lock up undesirables, which is always good fun. Just an FYI as well, in this point of the game I have just gotten a load of refugees, where this is why everyone's sick. Just like point out, my actual hospital system is very organised, and these will all be healed up in a few days. Don't judge me. Anyway, so let me just quickly go over the abilities. It's in the Book of Laws. Now, both of them, and you're going to notice that start off as quite almost benign, you know, kind of nice sounding. They don't sound particularly evil in any way, but as you go further down the tree, you kind of commit to a slightly darker side of the ideology. There is the suggestion, and I do want to try this in a playthrough soon, is there is the hint that this is all a choice. You don't have to do any of this. You can just ignore these and just stick with the adaptation tree. And which would be interesting experiment to see if the game has actually set you up to do that. I think they have, because there are some options which aren't related to any particular ideology. So wait, I'll quickly go over it. So you get your neighborhood watch first, which gives you the watchtowers. Those get upgraded very briefly to the guard stations, which are the towers that you just saw. And you can then upload an ability called Patrol, which basically it costs 10 food rations, lowers discontent, and raises hope a little bit. And then down this side, it's still quite benign. So you get a morning gathering, which is basically requires no resources whatsoever. Every single morning, your citizens will kind of gather up outside the generator, and basically you'll get a slow incremental increase in hope, which is quite useful. And as the days progress, you pretty much just max out your hope, which is quite grand. Foreman, which I'll show in a sec, which is a fantastic ability, which basically it raises workplace efficiency by 40% for 24 hours, and you can use it every 2 days. So if you have a nice food production, which is what I do right now, it means for basically 50% of the time, all of your important buildings can be running more or less a third, nearly half as fast as what they normally would, which is really, really useful, especially those of you who have kind of played through the game completely know that in the later game you do really need to stockpile resources, and if you're playing on hard, it's just useful for making sure you always have enough coal. So faith is very similar in the fact is that it also kind of switches tone a little bit once you get further down the tree. So in the case of order, you have the propaganda center and the prison, both are morally dubious to say the least. The prison is more useful for the actual story, I guess, in terms of the rogue faction that appears and enables you to convert them to re-educate them, shall we say, to hard-working and useful members of society. And the propaganda center just allows you to raise hope and discontent, though obviously, as I'll get down in a minute, I don't actually have any problems of hope anymore because I've chosen a new order as my final law. This is also the instance, prior to this, there are no flags anywhere, and it's when you open the propaganda center that the flags start turning up and things start to look a bit fashy. It's also just really useful as well. The agitator, which, as I've mentioned, basically raises workplace... Now, this is actually a typo, I think, because it says raises workplace efficiency by 20%, but it's actually between 2 and 4. I'm going to actually totally tweet the guys at the 11-bit studios in a minute saying, lads, you got a typo. Unless you stack them, which I don't think you can, so that's wrong. It's about 2 to 4%, which combined with foreman and all the various other abilities means you can still get buildings 160, 200% efficiency, which is really, really useful. I have at least one of these next to pretty much every work-related building. And these look cool around as well. This one and this one. Pledge of loyalty is people will be persuaded to sign a pledge of loyalty, which will turn them into secret informers. Now, this is completely related, as far as I can tell, to the story. I haven't seen anything. It gives you a permanent hope bonus, but that's about it, basically. I haven't seen any benefit outside of the story, because you get quests or kind of choices, pop-up choices, as you've seen, that kind of relate to this, but also enables you again to kind of convert the rogue faction. Same with forceful persuasion. Basically, it's when you're in the prison, it enables you to speed up how long it takes. People are normally in there about 3 days, 10 at a time, but you can have up to 30. This enables you to kind of, shall we say, put people through. But I never took that one because, you know, prisoners may get hurt or killed, and those of you especially who play on hard mode know that people are your most important resource ultimately. And the final of the laws is New Order, and this is where you just, you know, you go full fash. So basically, with the introduction of the New Order, all who voice doubts will be treated as traitors. Obedience is the highest virtue, without which the city can't survive. All those who do not follow will be swept aside. So hope will never be a problem again. A public execution space will be built. Yay. Some public enemies will die, and some people will feel compelled to fight this law. Some of them will die. The too long didn't read is I'll show you actually. You no longer have to worry about hope, so you get a thing called obedience. So people just will never lose hope now. Discontent still rises though. And this little cheerful place here will be built, and you can schedule executions. You have a little cutscene. I'm not going to show you. I'll let you see that for yourself, which basically you see people get executed, and it really does. The discontent just plummets. I think even I tried it earlier because my discontent's quite high because I've got people working longer shifts. Normally, if I turn them all off, discontent would probably completely disappear. But because I have people working long shifts, basically they're getting a bit grumpy. I executed one person, and it just completely dropped. Now, in terms of the benefits to the order tree, it's very good at reducing discontent. It looks cooler than the Faith. As far as I'm concerned, it does look cooler. The buildings are really tall. You know, they kind of loom out. The flag, you can see the Order ideology more, which I quite like because you at least feel like if you're gonna go all fashy, you might as well look fashy, yeah. Whereas the Faith one, it's a bit more subtle. It's actually sometimes even hard to see everything because it's just kind of these metal symbols everywhere. The buildings are quite useful as well. It's less resource intensive than potentially the Faith one is in terms of activating abilities. However, and I'll show you with Faith in a second, the one thing about Order which makes it a little bit weaker than Faith is there are two things. One is that I'll show you on Faith, but on Order you have to actually unlock your patrol ability. So you go neighborhood watch, guard post, patrol before you get anything that can raise hope. Faith gets something off the first choice. And also, with Order, all of your buildings need to be manned. In Faith, it's only about 2 of the buildings need to be manned. So they get churches, and I'll show you in a bit, that don't need to actually have people running them, which obviously means that then you can have those people doing other stuff. And again, because you have to wait a little bit until you get patrol, you can feel like when you're playing Order as if it's harder because your hope takes longer to go up. and discontent takes longer to go down. But it's not too much of an issue. It just, it can, I guess faith can feel a little bit easier. However, Foreman is one of the best abilities ever, which just changes everything. So I'm going to quickly wait until the morning and show you. So we'll just, I'll do it super fast. I don't usually like playing at the speed because it's too fast and bad shit happens. So I'll wait until I get 10 food. There we go. Okay. So basically, I've got, so you probably heard the loudspeaker then. One thing as well that both the ideologies have is that you'll get the narrative, the speakers and the announcements will change, as well as the music. I've disabled the music because it's really distracting when I'm making a video. However, the music, so the faith one is quite, you know, angelic and kind of churchy. However, the order one is quite, you know, militaristic and fashy, basically. So basically, so I've got an advanced steelworks. It's currently running at 120%, so that's 2% working near agitator, and I don't know where it's getting an extra 20% from as well, but if I put that, it's now 160%, and as you can see, the amount of steel just went up exponentially. It's even better when you look at the coal. If I go, there we go. So for example, so this is an advanced coal mine. Now this is only working at 60% efficiency because I haven't actually, this is hard mode, and this is a later important thing, but I haven't bothered upgrading my automatons just yet. So currently it's doing 45 coal per hour, which is still good because it's an advanced coal mine. If I do Foreman, which for some reason seems to work with robots, it goes up massively. Now I can use that every 2 days, and it lasts for 24 hours. As you can imagine, that's to the point where I even say that maybe is a little bit OP, because of the fact that, you know, I can get a, if I check my coal production now, it's, you know, I'm doing quite well in terms of my coal production versus coal consumption right now, to the point where, you know, I've only used it, I could do it on both of them and just it would go up even more. It's really, really, really useful. It's probably one of the better abilities. I would say that a weakness of Order is the fact that its other abilities aren't so good, to be utterly frank. I mean, Patrol's good, and what do we call it? Propaganda buildings are alright, but again, it's because those buildings have to be staffed. Right, so that's Order. As I said, it kind of feels harder at the start, but it does look cooler. Let's pop over the Faith, and you can actually have see the difference. Just as an FYI, again, this city is from last week, a little bit less organised than this one. Hello everyone, so this is the Faith City. So this is also playing on normal mode, and as you can see, I think we're on day 34 in the last one. This one's on day 33. I'll pause it actually so the day doesn't advance. As you can see, because I'm playing this one, this was from last week, it's on normal, so I actually have a lot more industry set up than my other save, because obviously in hard mode I have to focus on other things. As an urgency, it's less code, and I've got way more resources, to the point where when I do the end game bit, I rarely need to use a fraction of that. It was ridiculous. And also the buildings, because I hadn't been as focused on my building placement efficiency, at least on the outskirts, shall we say. The inside obviously fine. So this is Faith. Now, the buildings you get, in order, are the House of Prayer, which again, this is your version of the Watchtower. As you can see, it needs no one. And you can use, and you get an ability called Sermon. Sermon is incredible, because discontent goes down quite a lot, but it requires nothing to use. So it's quite almost, I mean, it just makes Faith feel easier from the start, because you can basically get your discontent and your hope up. Obviously, I have devotion, because this is obviously I've gone through the entire tree, and it's really, really helpful. It kind of maybe makes Faith feel easier from the start. Then you also get, which I really bloody well struggle to find because of the stupid, you get shrines, and for the life of me I can never find the bloody things. The problem is, right, is you know how you get the flags in the Fasci one, yeah? This one replaces all your lampposts with other smaller shrines, so when you're trying to find your actual shrines is a complete nightmare. So there we go. I'll try and find one while we're talking, but while I'm trying to look for a shrine, you also get the temple, and the temple is basically your version of the propaganda center. But again, notice, doesn't actually need people. It's a completely passive effect as well. Looks quite nice. All very friendly. I'm a history student, so I quite like going to churches, even if I'm not religious myself. They're very cool. and basically it has quite a few. Well, it starts off with the evening prayers, and there's also the ceremonial service. That's the one, and it's a similar kind of thing, but you can see they use food rations. And one note is you can actually start all of these abilities from any of these religious buildings. If I can find a bloody... Is that one? Is that one? Is that one? Is that one? Bloody, I can't find a shrine. I can't find a shrine, lad! Oh, wait, that one? Nope. Yeah, so one thing about Faith is it isn't as nothing stands out as much in Faith, which I guess is a slight issue. Anyway, I'll build one while we're talking. I was trying to find one earlier, I couldn't find it. So this is a shrine, and it literally is exactly the same as the Agitator. It does the exact same thing, except it's quieter. Boosts all of the efficiency by about 2%. Oh, is that one? No. Actually, it might even show me. There's one here somewhere. Nope. I cannot find it. Anyway, I won't show you, but it's basically, it works exactly the same as the Agitator. I think I just didn't build many, and I can't see them anymore. But they're in there. They're in here somewhere. I just don't know where. I just don't know where. Is that one? God, I can't see the bloody things at all. Now, however, like how there is a really, really cool ability in the Order Tree, there is an absolutely OP building for the Faith Tree, which is the little food. They're called the food kitchens, which they are easy to find. It's just down here. This, which is the field kitchen. Now, this is one of the few buildings beyond another building that actually requires people to man it, which is good because you're going to need a bit more food. So basically, this uses, as you can see, it uses about, number of resources. So it uses 20. I think it's a number of resources required to maintain all buildings of this type in the city. Oh, it's not bad at all, actually. So it uses a certain amount of food. I don't actually know exactly how much it needs. However, it's incredibly useful because what this does is workplaces in range get a heating boost thanks to the hot meals served by this building. Now, this is less important, I guess, on normal mode, but on hard mode, that is... I haven't played Faith very much on hard mode very much. I've mostly been kind of playing my order save, but I am going to... I built another automaton. I am going to do it because on hard mode, even with your generator maximized out, you're still going to struggle quite a bit with heat, especially anything outside the generator, because the heaters can only do so much. So having a food kitchen nearby... I'm still trying to find a shrine. Did I just not build any, or did I destroy them for some reason? But anyway, having one of those field kitchens nearby, raising it up by that one heat level is the difference between someone in a chilly environment, potentially even freezing, compared to someone in kind of more of a livable environment, like in the, say, in the yellow here. I forgot to turn these up. I think that this is a old save. I probably just turned them off to save stuff. But someone living in a slightly colder environment, it basically, it's just an absolute lifesaver. I would still argue that Foreman is probably overall better, but it's still quite cool. So let's actually go to the tree itself. So basically said you get the House of Prayer, which is the Watchtower equivalent, which, as you can see, gives you the House of Prayer and Sermon. So that on itself makes it feel a lot easier than Order straight off the bat, because you don't need to actually put people in these buildings and you get the ability straight away. Shrines, which is the Agitators. Again, actually, potentially, you get able to get those earlier than you're able to get the Agitators. There is actually one building which I haven't built, which I never build, which I should try at some point, which is the House of Healing, which is basically the Faith replacement for the Infirmary, which basically is an infirmary that also raises hope. It's a new building. House of Healing doesn't require engineers, treats the gravely ill, gives patients a small hope bonus. You have to, and the problem is with this one is it heals people slower than the infirmary. The reason why I've just never used these is I always have a reasonably efficient healing setup, and I just never needed it. So I probably should build one of these, and the problem is I've got 2 days until I can sign the law, so I can't show you it. However, basically it works the same. Also, the thing is, I just prefer the infirmaries, so I've never used that one. But then you've got field kitchens, which is those absolutely awesome, very, very cool buildings I've told you about. You get the temple, which, as said, is the propaganda center equivalent. Righteous denunciation, which is kind of that and public penance are kind of like your equivalent. Oh, there is one more building, which I'll show you in a second, the Faith Keepers. Which is kind of like your equivalent of the prison abilities to an extent. So, mostly public penance. I'll show you the Faith Keepers quickly, so I can show you these. Or is it in the church? I always forget. No, it's the Faith Keepers. So let me show you. So all these abilities come from this building here, which is the Faith Keepers, which is basically your guard post for faith, effectively. And you do have to man this by people as well. And so you get public penance. So public penance will take place. Those who admit to their wrongdoings will show remorse and be forgiven. Hope will rise. Discontent will fall when the ceremony begins. People may get injured. And then you get... that's just the one there. And then the other one is, I think, more of a passive ability, if I remember correctly. Let me go up and read the description. Yeah, so Righteous Denunciation is one of those, similar to the Informant ability for the Auditory. And the fact is that it's not really something you can use. However, it has a more of a passive effect, and again, affects the actual story. I said the Faith Keepers is what I said, so those are the kind of the guards. They're a bit darker, actually, because they're very, they're meant to... men of the cloth, but also quite aggressively authoritarian. This is where it starts to get darker again, see? This is every point when you pass kind of the first... when you go further down straight of these trees is when things this is the lovely side. Everything's beautiful and happy here. But once you pass basically evening prayers, stuff gets a little bit darker. So Protector of Truth, this is when it starts to really get a little bit fanatical. So the captain will assume the title of Protector of the Truth. He will be the only one who can tell us what is right and wrong, and so guide our faith. So this is just an ability similar to the Propaganda Center. Our faith will knock on every door, spread the word of our captain, and make sure he is obeyed. Oh, how nice. And also the Faith Keepers have another ability, which is Nighttime Procession, which means they just kind of run around, basically, and just, well, not run around, they basically just lead people on a little march around the city in the evening. And then the final one, because obviously this game is dark as it comes, the New Faith. With the introduction of the New Faith, all who voice doubts will be branded enemies of the faith. Everyone must be devoted to the survival of our cause. All those who do not follow will be swept aside. Literally exactly the same. So it's basically the religious version of the New Order from the Auditory, to the point where you even get your own execution place. And this is when that big icon gets put in front of the generator, the flags appear, and is that, no, it's not a shrine. I still can't see a fucking shrine, people. And this is also where all of the... So normally, if you remember, those are lampposts everywhere. They're completely now replaced by these shrines on more or less every building. There are a couple of lampposts lying around. It's hilarious how I cannot find any shrines, because I absolutely definitely made some, which is just odd, which is just peculiar. Anyway, so that's the faith tree. In essence, basically, it's kind of ostensibly the easier of the two, in terms of it gives you the abilities you need early on, and it requires less investment in terms of manpower compared to purpose. I wouldn't know maybe describe it's better or worse, actually, because, I mean, I prefer purpose just because it looks cooler, but it is also quite fashy. Whereas this one is as well. So neither of them are morally good. This one's nice, I guess, at least in the start. This one's evil, sneaks up on you, yeah. And however, it does have the field kitchens, which are just in themselves absolutely OP. Similar in a lot of ways to the foreman is for the purpose tree, for the order tree. So yes, that's it. Again, this city's actually on... Oopsie. This city is on normal mode, so obviously this is from last week, so everything's a little bit disorganized. However, I do have way more resources. I completed this game and only lost, like, in the last bit, for those of you who know what I'm talking about, only lost about 30, 40 people. I think neither in that 20. It wasn't very much at all, because I just had so much coal and everything. Right, so that's it. I tried to keep these as reasonably swift. It should be just over 20 minutes, hopefully. I'm going to be doing a Fallout video soon, another build at Sunshine Tidings Co-op. I think I've got a little bit more space, which is stools, so we can put some more buildings down. And I'm going to be doing another Frostpunk video later in the week. Now that I've gotten this video out of the way, I want to do a hard mode guide, because as you can see from my order playthrough, I like to think I'm pretty decent, and it can be kind of, think of it more as like a kind of update video on my last guide. My last guide's quite good, however, I do change a few of my priorities. I still keep the same of overall theme of getting my industry up as quick as possible, but I change a few things around. Anyway, as always, follow me on Twitter at norespawns if you want to natter to me there. If you have any kind of insights on how you play regarding the various purposes, I'd be quite keen to kind of hear your thoughts. Just a reminder before you chew me out on this city, just remember, this was from last week, I've changed a bit then, and also it was normal mode, so it's pretty relatively straightforward comparatively to hard. But yes, I'll have my new video up soon. You lot enjoy the rest of your week. You take care.